Hello, hello. Welcome to Exploring Autism Round 2 Activate podcast. We're so excited to be having a chat again today with Daniel and exploring more. Will we get it all done in round 2, do you think, Daniel, or perhaps do we need 3 and 4?
But that's a good question, Josh. But I think there's a lot of development right now in the autism space, or even I'd say the policy space that concerns autism both directly and indirectly, that you might have to go for a part 3 or even a part 4, considering everything that's been happening lately.
Well, let's get into it. So this week and many weeks in the last 14 years that I've been out and about talking to employers, trying to create roles for people with disability. I had a conversation with an employer, and their business was manufacturing, a really process driven organization. They had checklists, they had repetitive work. Now, in my experience, and also according to our data of placements and placements we've captured information about disability type, we've found that jobs that are of a repetitive nature, that are structured, process driven, backed by checklists and things like that, often suit someone living with autism. Now, that's according to our data. Could you comment on that, Daniel?
I would say that's mostly true. I would say that's mostly true as well. Um, I don't have ADHD. Well, at least I don't think I also have ADHD. But there is a growing trend of autistic people, on particularly late diagnosed women, who are what's called ADHD, meaning they have a diagnosis of both ADHD and autism. So maybe for that cohort, less so. And living with ADHD, I would say, is very, very hard, because you would have those two conflicting traits where you've got the ADHD probably desire for freedom and spontaneously conflicting with the autistic urge for need of structure and order and lack of chaos. I mean, my mum has ADHD. I'm pretty sure I don't have ADHD, knowing myself. So I definitely could tell that that's definitely not me. So as someone who has just autism, I would say that's mostly true. But for an ADHD person, I would say that the outcome would be remarkably different.
So, so it would be correct in saying that someone living with autism does typically suit those type of orderly conditions.
Yeah, I would say mostly.
Yeah. Yeah. And why is that, Daniel?
Um, it's interesting because I was actually talking to my support worker, who also is my coach, and he told me that there is a bit of a human demand for what's called homeostasis, or keeping things the same. But I think because of the brain structure of autism and because of autistic traits, I think that need for homeostasis, it's like much, much more pronounced. Much more pronounced. And that goes back to what we were talking about, the autism wheel last session, where some people in that autism wheel, that piece of that wheel is probably bigger or more pronounced.
Okay. So often, when you're out there talking to an employer and they just hit you on the spot with a question like that, like, oh, why does someone living with autism suit structure, repetitiveness, order? What's a quick, respectable way to answer that question?
If an employer asks someone like myself
Yeah.
in a job interview, if that's true.
I'm thinking more of, like, in my role and other roles in this employment services space, when they're out talking to employers, engaging with employers, and trying to help that business recruit talent. And it comes up that the practitioner sees that the workplace might suit someone living with autism, but you have an employer who might not know much about autism, and they ask, why is it, why does someone with autism suit this type of work?
I think it depends on the situation, Josh. I mean, if the practitioner, let's just say a DES or IEA caseworker, was reverse marketing a client, like a participant,
Mm.
I would say it would have to be super, super individual. But if you're reaching out like at a cohort level, like, I don't know, you could be an advocate, or maybe you're a caseworker advocating for this employer to hire more autistic desk clients, then yeah, you can. It would be helpful to just provide some generic core characteristics of autism, which is the need for structure, the need for routine, predictability, clear instructions, rote learning, etc. An analogy, if I could give you a bit of an analogy, it's a little bit like how if you, it's a little bit like take personal training. Like my support worker, who also happened to be my personal trainer, told me that if someone wants to be a personal trainer and teach a group of people that's more generic and do group classes, they only need a Cert 3 in personal training. But if they want to do one-to-one with a client, they would need a Cert 4 because they have to correct their form, know their strengths, know their weaknesses, prevent the client from getting injured, etc. That's pretty similar to autism, and I would say the disability space as well.
Yeah, because I like when I'm talking to an employer, like in this instance, I'm cautious to not say that people with autism are all the same. You've got to be careful with the language. Yeah. And I think you said there, broadly speaking, some of the characteristics of someone living with autism would prefer an environment where there's order, structure,
Yeah,
repetition.
there's core traits. There are core traits that are common for pretty much every autistic person. And then there's additional ones that vary.
And so it turned out this employer actually knew a bit about autism because they had a child that was going through diagnosis, and so they were a bit more educated than what I would say
Sorry to interrupt, the son of the owner?
yeah,
Okay.
just a bit more educated than say I mean this respectfully, the majority of
Yeah,
employers
the
out
person
there.
down the street.
Yeah. So if I had an employer that I wasn't very well educated or aware of autism, and they said to me, "Josh, what's autism?" And I'm having, I've probably got 30 to 60 seconds to explain what autism is to this employer. How would you do that?
First start saying that it's a neurodiverse condition. And I'd say saying that is very, very, very important.
And
Be-
what would that mean, for example? And then how would you explain that if that was questioned?
because it's a condition that affects someone's thinking patterns and cognitive patterns. But saying neurodiverse is important because it's not a mental illness, but it's also not an intellectual or cognitive impairment. Although some people argue that intellectual and cognitive disabilities fall under the neurodivergent umbrella, that's kind of like a debate for another day. And although many autistic people, not all, but a lot of them might have a co-occurring intellectual impairment or cognitive disability, they co-occur. They're not the same thing.
Beautiful. I mean, they just explain that so perfectly. So then if I have an employer that says, so how would I identify if someone came into a retail outlet or, an employer that interacts with customers in a frontline capacity? And if they then ask, how would I approach a customer with autism differently to a customer without? Or how would I even identify that perhaps a customer may be living with autism?
That's a good question, Josh. First of all, there is a international growing scheme called the Yellow Sunflower Organization. So, if someone has autism, the chances are they're going to wear the yellow sunflower lanyard, or they might wear a badge saying, like, I have autism. That's something I wear from time to time, if that's their choice. And the yellow sunflower lanyard will often have an ID card saying that they have an invisible disability. Although the downside, in my opinion, as much as good the Yellow Sunflower organization is, and this is some constructive feedback to them, is that because I have one myself, it doesn't say front in the card what the invisible disability is, it's in a bit of the back. So some people, like myself, might take that card out and might put their own card. But the yellow sunflower lanyard does indicate that it's probably the most respected, accredited international scheme that there is. So someone might have additional identifiers to that, but the yellow sunflower lanyard is definitely across airports, airlines, or cruise ship companies, hotels, tourism operators, the most internationally respected and well known. Unfortunately, not every business or franchise out there is signed up to one, is signed up to the Yellow Sunflower scheme, but it is growing. So it's sort of a watch this space sort of thing.
Okay. Well, that's so say then if it's a coffee shop, someone's taking a customer's order and they're wearing
Yellow
the
Sunflower, yeah.
yeah. What does that mean for the person that's taking the order? Do they need to do anything differently to be more inclusive or supportive? Or I suppose it's again, it probably comes back to individual circumstances. But is there anything you could speak to an employer about that?
I think it's to have a little bit of a social script and ask, for example, how can I help you? And give that person time to process what's happening and to explain their condition or to explain what their needs are. Because obviously, in a situation like a coffee shop, no one's going to give out a whole essay on what their condition is or a report listing every single thing they can or not because it's not practical. So the best they can do is, I guess, train the staff. So when someone says, oh, I have autism and whatever, and they know the basics of slowing down, taking that time, it can feel that succinct interaction of having the yellow sunflower makes it more practical.
Okay.
I think in a coffee shop or something like that, if someone is say a barista or someone is taking an order or something, you could advertise a role where that person is what's called a higher duties or a HD, kind of like somewhere between a supervisor and a manager, and they could be, without trying to seem like, I know this is going to upset employers, but you could have someone that is the designated officer, the designated liaison officer with a friendly sticker or sunflower lanyard or with a badge saying, hi, my name's Cassie, I'm here to help, sort of thing, with a little smiley face. Something that has a friendly approach. A liaison, so a designated liaison officer. It doesn't have to be a separate role. It can be an indicated role that someone signs up to, and maybe that could be a role to encourage. Maybe it has a little bit extra pay, maybe extra experience that someone might want to pad on their resume, because a lot of, like when I go on Higher Up, for example, I see a lot of young 19, 20-year-olds that maybe they're studying occupational therapy or social work, and their job while they're studying at uni is being a barista, to being a coffee shop, like all uni students do to make ends meet while at uni. And that and many uni students, particularly young people who are doing that job, would be very keen to put their hand up to, like, say, I'm going to be the additional liaison officer to, de-escalate if things go wrong or break things down or take the order for that person.
Excellent suggestion. Excellent. Because you look at that type of setting and that's a setting that interacts with a lot of the population because a lot of people love drinking coffee, or if it's a retail outlet, people need to shop. And sometimes those retail outlets, whatever shape or size, might not have had any specific disability training. Yeah. But if they have someone in their organisation that becomes then the hero or the champion for that,
Bit like a
then
fire warden. Bit like a fire warden. Like my last workplace, when that someone would volunteer to be the fire warden, and usually it was the manager or something.
yeah, no, excellent idea. I wanted to talk about a stereotype, Daniel, and that is STEM. And the
Yes.
stereotype the stereotype that STEM is not the only is the only
Yeah.
path for
Yeah.
autistic
I
people in employment. So tell me, what does STEM stand for?
Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
Okay, so why is it that autistic people often just get, oh, he's autistic, so she's autistic, so they can go work in STEM?
I think that comes from stereotypes. People like or celebrities or very high profile, wealthy and powerful autistic individuals like Elon Musk, Bill Gates, or I don't know if Bill Gates is autistic, but a lot of people think he is, but like say Elon Musk, uh also popular culture such as Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang Theory or The Good Doctor. Well, Good Doctor's medicine, but I guess medicine, it's in the science field, so I guess it counts as STEM. And popular culture and the so-called successful autistic people that stand in the limelight more cast a major shadow that traditionally you're either so autistic that you're like Rain Man and you're rocking back and forward living in an institution, or you're Elon Musk and that there's no in between. And that's just hurtful. It's hurtful and unhelpful in every single way of form. And that perpetuates, again, going back to healthcare, education. It's sort of a dark horse, really. And it's sort of the three dark horses, as they say in the Bible, that go in and sort of possess the service environment. And everyone from NDIS providers to healthcare to education get poisoned with this mentality. And then that's when unmet need and stuff and misunderstandings snowball into those eventual, I would say, bad life outcomes. Could be a mental health crises or unemployment, underemployment, or autistic burnout because you're studying a course that's very, very intense because everyone believes that you should be in that course and not the other. And even taking away um, individual career choices and wants and freedoms from autistic people because, you might want to do art, you might like music, you might be creative. But imagine being told, no, you can only do STEM. That's a mentality that belongs in the Soviet Union, not modern day Australia.
Yeah, and if you have a senior person in a business perhaps that um, has a new role that is outside of that STEM space, that have an applicant that for a role that's outside of STEM, and if that stereotype is in the belief system of that person that's undertaking the interview, they may unconsciously or consciously say, well, this person is not suitable for the role
That's right.
because this isn't a STEM role.
That's right. That's right. Without looking at the person's qualification, or references, or evidence of what they implemented.
Well, I can certainly break down the stereotype, which experience that I've had placing people with disability into employment, placing people living with autism into employment, because I've placed many into roles such as hospitality
Yeah, hospitality, exactly.
and roles that are very much engaging with frontline customers that require quite an outgoing. Although you're not in a hospitality role, Daniel, I know that you've got a
I
hospitality
have a hospitality background. I've worked many
so
years
that
in
there
hospitality,
breaks
so I can
the
speak for myself there.
yeah, that breaks the stereotype. So you're living example of that.
Also, don't forget autistic athletes as well.
Yeah. Look, that's about all we have time for today. And I just have to say thank you again for sharing your valuable insights and can't wait to get on to part 3 and 4.
Pleasure.
And thanks again, Daniel. And we'll look forward to chatting soon.
Thank you. Thank you.